Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. And I have something in my throat, but maybe I don't need to fix that because it makes me sound more manly. Today's episode, Benji and I are unpacking failure and your relationship with failure and how to build a healthy relationship with the idea of failure, how to overcome failures, how to make failures a nugget of wisdom that lasts a lifetime, that other people can learn from, that you can learn from. There's a process, and it's actually quite simple. But we also want to unpack just the kind of esoteric and the emotional relationships that we have with failure, because that is crucial for your sexual integrity and for your life at large. So listen to Benji and I. We got stuff to say, and we want to help. We want to impart our centuries of wisdom upon thee, dear listener. Let's go. Benji's laughing, everybody. He's having a good day. He's got his makeup on. He's looking good. Welcome, Benji.
Hello, Andrew. I do not wear makeup, just for people that don't understand your sense of humor. I feel like I have to
He's just glowing. He's got his glow
mention
on.
that.
Look at you. Look at you.
It's
Having your
it's all the
yogurt.
all the natto and kimchi that my wife is feeding me.
Natto and kimchi, the double fermented pie.
Yep.
That's intense. You're having two dead things at once. You know, in the food world, kimchi, natto, kombucha, these things are all the Jesus of food because they died and then they were resurrected stronger than ever. Right? They're superpowers that they were once dead. Though I'm assuming Jesus did not smell like kimchi but then the second coming, hey, he probably did. He ate a lot of it, right?
He brought the natto, yo. I'm surprised that they sell natto in America because I know I'm fairly certain only Japanese people buy natto in America. At least at our grocery store, I've only seen Japanese people stockpiling natto, and somehow there's enough Japanese people to sustain a demand for natto here in the States. So that's pretty cool.
Well, let's talk about natto real quick because somebody had to discover the fact that something was dead and a failure, but they found use for it and they resurrected it, made an entire food group out of it that is now a superfood, good for gut health. Like they say, it's one of the great longevity tools. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Not natto beans, but failure. Because
I have made natto. Sorry, my wife has made natto in the what's the crock pot that everyone has called the slow cooker?
It's called
instant
crock pot.
Instant pot. And it was a massive colossal failure. The natto. It smelled like 10 times worse than real natto and tasted gross. So that is the first failure that came to mind today.
Yeah, I failed. Talking about failures in natto, I failed for the first couple years to acknowledge natto's existence because I looked at it and I was like, you're not going to put that anywhere near me. That stuff looks like in movies when there's like in Ghostbusters with the ooze. And it's like so stringy and slimy. And I don't even want to, I don't even acknowledge the existence of that thing that's looking at me in the eye. Like, don't talk to me about that. But then I figured out like a gringo's guide to natto. If you're just getting out now, I can have it. I like it. It's good, right? But that transition from disgusting to palatable was putting sesame oil and then sesame seeds on and then stirring it up. The sesame oil takes out the sting of how nasty it first tastes, and then the seeds make it crunchy instead of slimy. It was like this super thing, and where all of a sudden I could be like, I just don't have to think about the taste so much, and I can do this. And then you develop a palate. It's just like so foreign. It's not like bad food, but it's just like so foreign for the palate of somebody who grew up eating like, I don't know, like white people food, like generic white people meat and potatoes, like in Canada where I grew up, just like meat and potatoes, very bland, you know. Nobody in my lineage knows how to handle spice.
You turn that failure into a learning lesson.
Yes.
You took into life.
We're
Dominating
giving
Nato.
Nato a lot of airtime today. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this event, of this topic. The reason I really, really wanted to delve into this is because, generally speaking, most people have a very difficult relationship with failure. They don't like it. They don't want it. They don't want to talk about their failures. But specifically in the high noon world, we have so many people that have an expectation for their recovery with sexual integrity, or when they have some sort of embarrassing habit or shame, and they expect it to be like an operation when they come to us, that we can just systematically remove pain from their life and then it's gone forever, right? But in reality, some people's journey, Benji, some people's journey, it's like years long, and it's riddled with up like times when they're doing really well and then times when they fall flat on their face. And as a movement who strives for very big ideals, world peace, all this stuff,
World
failure
domination.
is like our enemy. We hate it because we're like, you are preventing me from, world peace, failure, my shortcomings, whatever. And I just want to unpack this as much as possible to allow people the permission. Because here's the other thing. The other side of that is when we started talking as High Noon, when we were just starting, you were at the first ever High Noon Summit. We got a very small minority of people. I just remember one guy. No, I remember two guys giving this feedback of like, you can't talk about this stuff because you're giving permission for people to make these mistakes. You're giving permission by talking about mistakes. You're now saying it's okay to make mistakes. And I want to unpack that sentiment too, because it's a very destructive worldview, but I understand it. I understand where it comes from. So I just want to let's just go to town on failure and see it from as many angles as possible so that everybody can build a healthy relationship. Because it's not about, if you are too welcoming to failure in your life, and you're just like, then I guess I am failure because it's my best friend, right? But you can leverage failure and have it very close to you, but use it as a tool to become a stronger person, a better person. But it's how you manage that relationship that really matters. You know what I mean? So Benji, I think you've talked about this on the podcast. You have a history of being pretty harsh on yourself, being very heavy-handed with yourself when you fail at something or when you're not doing well at something. So tell me about your relationship with failure,
Yeah.
growing up
I
and now.
Yeah. It's a good question. I was reflecting on this, and I have never felt that I failed actually at anything. And I think the reason for that, I was really trying to dig deep, like what have I failed at? And my current understanding of my relationship with failure is that I don't feel like I've ever failed because I very much do follow the cliche platitude of you only fail when you quit. Like that's like ingrained in my mind. And I've always felt that. And like before it was a thing that people said on YouTube Shorts and wherever, it was like, I only fail if I give up. And I always imagine just, the road to success is often falling flat on your face, like you said, and stumbling and breaking a leg, falling in the mud. And it kind of feels like when I label as failure, I'm just kind of like sitting there crying and not getting up. You know what I'm saying? But if I can take that experience to the new thing, even if I completely shut down what I was working on and I take the learning experience to the new thing, then it's not a failure. It's like that was necessary in order to learn the lesson. However, I think what you're getting at is my relationship with failure is not I failed. It's always coming as a form of I am failing. I've definitely felt that a lot. It's like I am failing because when I'm there, when I'm like in the ditch, falling on my knees, the feeling is like I'm failing.
Yeah.
In whatever I'm trying to do, I'm failing. This is right when I'm failing. And that's a really hard place to be. And I've even said that many times to my wife, like when I'm really feeling down or, honestly, just really low in a funk, as they call it.
Funk soul brother.
When I'm in a funk, can't say that. When I'm really feeling down, I've said that often to my wife, just like, I feel like I'm failing. And I say that because I know, like in my soul, that it's only a failure if I decide not to learn and get up. But in the moment, it feels like I'm failing as a husband, I'm failing as a father.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And those are the main areas for me in particular that I feel that, because that's my North Star. That's like my greatest vision and value system is wrapped around who am I as a husband and provider, and also for my kids. Am I expressing love in God's grace and God's love to my kids? And if I'm not, like I say something unloving, or I make a mistake, or whatever it is, I have that like feeling just like I'm a failure. Yeah.
That's interesting. So what you're saying, I mean, what I'm gathering, and I would definitely agree from my experience, is that failure is also an energy. It's kind of like a feeling. There's like you're thinking about being a failure, but then there's also the energy of failing. Like I'm presently in a state of failing. And what that I would say visually looks like to me is that you have a North Star goal, which is like imagine just like a very linear vertical line, and you're going up. And when you step off course and you start to go, away from your North Star goal, the energy is that of failing because you're walking away. You can feel viscerally that you are walking away from the person that you want to be, and that is like an energy suck. That's I was just talking about this with my wife. We just had some growth over this past week, and she said some words, and at the end of it she said, how do you feel? And I said, I feel nothing right now. I just need to walk away and process this, and I had to digest it, right, and then come back and be like, oh yeah, because there's energies that take us away from our North Star, and one of them is the feeling of failing, which is really cool that you identified that. I definitely agree. I think everybody listening can agree that you felt like a failure while you're in the process of still failing in a sense, right? Like before the game's over. And this is cool too. This is why I love sports or like sporting events, especially in large crowds, because it's so energy oriented. It's like when the team is losing, you can just see it all. Like let's say basketball, because I've been watching basketball a lot. And Ravi, shout out to Ravi, who's the Philippines loves the NBA. I don't know why, but they love it. But when you watch a team and they're really like deflated, all of their passes, like they get all sorts of steals, like interceptions, and just nothing lands. They're not doing stuff. But when a team's really got that energy of winning, they're relaxed. They're making extra fancy passes. That's when they're doing layups. They're adding a little bit of flair, and the tides can shift. Like if that's when it takes a really good leader, right? A coach or like a team captain or somebody to smack people out of that state of feeling like we've already lost this, and to start regaining that energy. And when the crowd starts to see that team is waking up, there's this electric energy that flies throughout a stadium. You can even get parts of it from home just watching it. That's why like sports are so exciting. It's an exhilarating experience to see somebody snap out of that failure energy and move into that I'm back energy, that resurrection energy that we're talking about, natto beans. Like I'm back with a vengeance. That's when like you see it's so lame, but they always cut to those bros right next to the court high-fiving each other because they can't just hug because it's public, I guess. Maybe they don't even know each other. It's just not appropriate for a basketball game, but they just start high-fiving the crap out of each other because they're so excited, because it's so much fun to watch that person or that team snap out of the failure energy and go back into the resurrection energy of like, I can do this, I'm gonna do this. And you start to, and that's what every movie, right? Every comeback movie is like, he's down and out. We just watched Back to the Future as a family, 1 and 2 last weekend. We're gonna do 3 tonight because it's Friday night here. And the whole part about, George McFly reclaiming his power, not because for personal reasons, but when Biff is hurting Lorraine. For anybody who hasn't seen this movie, none of this makes sense. But George is a dweeb. He has no self-authority, and he's losing. He's about to get his arm broken by the bully, and he's fine with that because he has no personal power. But when he sees the bully hurt the woman that he loves, you see him get that energy. And every time you watch it, you get this sense of righteousness pulsing through your veins. You're like, yeah, you get that guy. And then he knocks him out with one punch. maybe people don't like violence. I get that. It's just a metaphor. But that could be your inner demon, right? That inner bully could be that voice in your head that's like, you suck. All you deserve is porn. You're never going to get blessed. You getting that resurrection energy and punching your inner bully in the face is you standing up and be like, no, I'm a child of God. I got this. Like, I'm going to throw away my phone. I'm going to turn it on airplane mode. I'm going to go and do 1,500 push-ups. And I'm going to go hug an old lady and I'm going to donate to world peace. That's who I am, right? It's like when you catch it, when you catch that wave of opportunity to snap out of the state of failing and get back into the state of remembering who you are, right? When you stop believing the lies and you start remembering the truth, that short-term amnesia of believing the devil rather than your heavenly parent. You know what I mean? Like that's the theme of so many movies. That was like that was Star Wars. Remember Darth Vader is watching Luke Skywalker getting killed by the Emperor in the very last movie. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen a movie from 1972 or something. So when you see him wake up and his sense of righteousness and he kills the man who's killing of darkness, who's killing the light, he can't there's something that snaps in him, and that was a very emotional part, for so many people. So these stories are so true because it's like it's in our veins. This is running through us all the time. We have these characters in us, and the failure is like trying to prevent us from the light that God is pouring on us 24/7, but we don't have access to it when we're in that energy of failure.
Yeah. I felt the energy you're talking about a lot.
Which one?
And the I'm failing energy.
I felt but you've also felt the good stuff too, right?
I've felt the good stuff, but I think there's something I identified in myself because we have the privilege of mentoring lots of people, right, in Hainan.
Sure.
And I think there's a difference between feeling like I feel this feeling, but I'm acknowledging that that's not me and that's not who I am. And
sure.
I actually, like you're saying, there is a goodness in me, but right now this is how I'm feeling. That's kind of like having a certain level of self-awareness, and the ability to do that is invaluable because then you can decide, like, I don't want to be associated with that feeling. That's not who I am, But there are a lot of people that I talk to who are like struggling with their sexual integrity. They're like, I am a failure because of this.
Yeah.
And that's their energy. And it's like, well, no, you have energy right now of I'm failing. That's what's going on. You are not a failure. It's kind of like people that say I am an addict versus I have an addiction.
Yeah.
And there are people like they will fight to the death for their freedom to believe with all their soul that I am an addict for the rest of my life until I die. Right?
Their identity.
It's like where's that? That's just clearly lacking of ability to take a step back and just observe your behavior and your thoughts and be like, okay, that's not who I want to be. That's not even remotely healthy. That's not of God. That's of something else. I'm choosing to go to this vertical place that you're talking about towards my North Car. And so, especially for us people that have high standards, I mean, everyone here listening to this is like, has values, particularly high values in our faith, right? And so, and because I want to be someone that is like, I want to give so much love to my kids, and which is beautiful and great. But then when I fail to do that, or I make missteps, you could say, in doing that, where I'm, say something unloving or regret, it's like that pang of my conscience is there, that feeling of guilt, but sometimes it turns into a sense of shame where I feel like I am a failure. I'm failing, right, as a dad.
Sure.
It doesn't happen often anymore, but I've definitely verbalized that a lot. Like, I feel like I'm failing. But I'll give myself the credit because I always know that it's temporary and it's not true. It's not the truth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and some stuff is technically a failure and it needs to be acknowledged and digested in order for it to become valuable. Like, sometimes you cannot graduate into the next level until you've failed enough. So, for instance, I don't know, think about True Father, right? This idea that, I think we say it very casually, but he came up with the idea of divine principle, and then in his words, he presented it to God, and God rejected him, right? So I was like, what? Obviously he didn't say what? Come
My
on.
lord.
If God was just like a sarcastic weenie from, or sorry, of truth. Anyway, so uh, he presented it, was rejected, went back to the drawing boards, and was like, no, this is the best that I can come up with. It's got to be right. And then he presents it, rejected, and the third time is accepted, right? And it was like a process of like uh, tightening tightening your belief that sometimes you like I have this thing with my spiritual mom. We don't do it so much anymore since I got blessed. I do this kind of stuff with my wife, but back in the day when I was a single man, I had a mother figure, and what would happen is if I was really convicted about something, I'd tell her, and oftentimes she would challenge me. And it was this game that now my wife and I do, which is called "Are you crazy or am I crazy?" And we'll debate on something, and sometimes you're so convicted about something, but when it's challenged, you realize that it's not so great, and you're able to let it go. But same in the instance of True Father. Similarly, is sometimes the world says no, but you know deep down inside, no, this is right. And you fight tooth and claw for it because you know it has to exist. And maybe nobody else sees what you see. But in order to unearth that, you have to grapple with kind of being a failure to the world in a sense in order to be the ultimate success, right? And I remember Reverend Compton, who's just on a recent episode, gave a talk in Top Gun. Do you remember the first Top Gun ever?
Yep.
For this next generation. There was a Top Gun back in the 80s, but
Yep.
this one, I remember him saying very clearly that, like, to the world, when Jesus was on a cross, he was an absolute failure. There was a sign above his head making fun of him. He was a historical failure at the time of his death, right? But he opened a chasm to a new dimension known as paradise, known as like a new realm of love that we all have access to now because of that. And so that level of conviction is definitely necessary sometimes, in the face of being a perceived failure to everybody else. There's going to be times in your life when everybody's going to say no, and you're just going to have to take responsibility for being a lone goat out there in the world, and you gotta fight like crazy. And sometimes that means changing career paths. After, like, we had a guy in one of our programs who took 4 years of engineering. It's kind of expensive to go to school for that. Graduated, did it for like a year, and it's like, I hate engineering. Then went to a coding boot camp for like 6 months. Now he makes more money than he did before, and he loves it way more. But for that period of time, he had to be the lone wolf that had to digest the fact that he had just spent, I don't know, 60, 70,000 bucks on an education that is now just utterly useless to him, and telling his friends and his family what he's up to. And like, you can feel like a failure in that moment. But if you're convicted and you know that something is right and you're doing it for the right reasons, sometimes you just have to go out and you have to really face those demons, and you just got to admit it and digest it and go through. And I think, yeah, that's why I ended up in America. That's why I ended up doing so many great things. Is everybody else is like, are you nuts? And like, I guess so. I just have to do this thing, right? And it's scary. It's very scary.
Oh yes, Benji here, guys. If you've benefited from this episode and you love the podcast, then please consider becoming a donor for High Noon. It is a special privilege to be a donor. If you want to donate just $10 a month or $20 a month or $100 a month, if you want some way to contribute to something really, really impactful, and you have some cash to do that, then please let High Noon be that for you. We welcome you. We are still a nonprofit, and we use all the funds to help support our programs, to change the lives of lots of people and travel the world and do epic stuff like that. So please go to highnoon.org/donate, and please help us out. All right, see ya.
But that's how you change your identity, right? And with porn, if you can imagine, let's kind of bring it back down. There's this voice in your head that allows porn to come back. It's like, it's not that bad. And you keep that. If you can imagine a character in your head that's like the justification guy that is like the bouncer at the door, but he's a terrible bouncer who's easily bribed. And you know that he's being bribed and he's letting the wrong people into the club, right? And it's creating chaos. It's, all sorts of stuff. You have to fire this guy. but somehow he's like your cousin or something. You don't want to hurt his feelings, but you got to look at this guy and be like, look, you've been stealing from me and I know it, and you got to go. And that's what that justification voice is in our head. It's like, oh, porn isn't that bad. If you really want to ratchet down and create like a very solid spirit and mind and heart, you're going to have to fire some people, some voices in your head, and replace them with more trustworthy people. And that is scary because that justification has allowed you to remain comfortably numb for a while. But if you really want to wake up, you're going to have to go to a new place that's scary. And in this situation, it's like you're going to have to confront those voices and be like, I know you've been lying to me and I know I've let you lie to me, but no more. You're fired.
Yeah, I've had to fire some bouncers recently.
Like who? Tell me.
So, we're talking about failure. I realized that there's a lot of ongoing failures that I didn't even recognize as failures. But when I really sat down and got very clear about what I want, like what is your North Star? I mean, that's like we can't ignore the fact that having the will and ability to have a North Star is a uniquely human thing that is a tremendous gift. Just to have consciousness itself, to be like, I want to be this way, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. You could be a squirrel if you wanted. Squirrels can't be humans, I think, but we can be squirrels. No, we can't. But you can decide to try to be.
People. I remember seeing videos of people who genuinely believe that they're like seahorses or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
right. So as humans, we can decide to try to be a seahorse, which seahorses can't do. Right. That's my point.
Sure.
So I was recognizing that I have this North Star, if you will, I want to be fully grateful to my wife all the time. And I envisioned this version of me that's just like, I'm just so grateful, like for just to be with her, just for everything she does. And I'm just so, every time I see her, I just want to be just grateful. The opposite of kind of contempt and ingratitude and blaming. It's just, I want to feel grateful.
And judgment.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's not that I was particularly judgmental of her. It's just like, I want to have that feeling of just always like, I can't believe that I get you in my life, right? For my wife. And then I was noticing when I started really visualizing this every day, waking up and just seeing her like for the first time with fresh eyes and being able to sleep next to her and being able to hug her, right? And that stuff. And then I started noticing when I made this North Star, there's a lot of times where she asks me for help around the house. And I kind of just, depending on how I'm feeling, I'll just be like, I'm tired. Or I say this joke where I say something like, I say thanks, but no thanks. Right? Like, can you help me do the laundry? And
I'm good. Thanks.
I've done this so many times. Like I treat it like she's like offering me, candy. I'm like, I'm good. Thank you. Like and then I started, when I made this clear visualization to be grateful, every time I see her for the last month, every time I see her doing laundry, folding laundry, I like run to her and I sit down and I'm like, how can I help you? I like start folding all the laundry, even though I don't agree with the entire concept of folding kids' underwear. It's like impossible to fold kids' underwear. It doesn't work. It's like, it doesn't,
it's annoying.
It doesn't stay folded. It doesn't work, right? I'm like, why don't we just throw the underwear in a box and just let them deal with it? Anyways, my point being that just like, I want to support you. Like, I'm so grateful for you, what you do. I want to support you. And interestingly, I just had a conversation with her today after dinner, and she's been so like happy this month. She's been just very emotionally kind of happy. And
he nailed that.
Synonym for
happy, like emotionally happy. You know what I'm saying?
Joyful, vibrant. She's been vibrant, radiant. She's been
effervescent.
To be around. Yes, sure. All those words. And I was like, what happened this month? I was like, why are you doing well? And she said, well, the only thing I can think of is you've been very helpful. And the thing is, like, I wasn't trying to be helpful. It's like I was wanting to be grateful. That's what I want. I wanted to be something. Yeah. And because I want to be a certain way, my actions followed. It was like a natural, like, I want to help you do dishes. I'll do all the dishes. Like, you sit down, I'll do everything. I'll do all the because that's I'm cultivating the feeling of being grateful, and that's naturally what I would do if I was grateful. And so I feel like I've cracked something where I'm just like, okay, it's not about doing something or like forcing myself to do something that I don't want to do. It's about being a certain way, and then my actions should align with that naturally because that's who I want to be, you know?
Well, that's such an important point. Okay, so you felt acutely when you weren't in alignment with your goal, with your North Star, because you had somewhere to go. So, like, it's such a basic metaphor, but it's so important that when you leave your house, if you have somewhere to go and you're in a rush and it's very important, it's very clear if you're taking the most efficient route or not. If you have a very important job interview that for your dream job, you're going to work for Dwayne The Rock Johnson as his personal trainer. That's probably the worst job ever. Anyway, whatever it is, your vocational dream, and the person's ready for you, but you know that they're serious and you want to show up on time. You're not going to dilly-dally. You're going to get there efficiently. And if you see something really cool and interesting, there's some fun cake parade on the way, and everybody's free cake for everybody who comes to the cake parade. You'll be like, huh, interesting, but I gotta go somewhere, right? And then you can even meet some old high school friend who's like, yo, how are you up to? And it's like, look, I'm so nice to see you. I got to talk later. Right now, I got this thing. And you're very serious because you have somewhere to go. That's what life is meant to be, is that you have somewhere to be, to go, something to do with your time and energy. And without that, let's do that metaphor again. You leave the house, you have nowhere to go. You see a cake parade, you're like, yeah, of course, free cake. Probably eat too much cake. Probably now feel a little bit poopy because you just had like 7 slices of cake because there's like cake from around the world. You want chocolate, you want carrot, every kind of cake, free. And then you meet that friend and they're like, hey, high school, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, and you start talking. You probably talk for too long. And now you have a bit of a headache because you're like, oh man, this is like, I did not sign up for this. There's a completely different experience based on your sense of urgency of where to go, right? And having somewhere to go. And that's every single day is like, well, I'll just take out my phone because I don't have that much to do right now. Well, you're bleeding energy. Mm-hmm. You're bleeding inspiration and like the joys, the good stuff of life, the magic, the spice of life is oozing out of you because it's being siphoned by all these distractions. And so in your case, it's as simple as I want to show up and experience being a very supportive husband. And when you're not doing that, because that's a place to go, that's a state to be, when you're not doing that, it becomes very obvious when you're not doing that. How you cope with that sense of failure in that moment is really important, but it's actually super helpful because now you have a clear distinction between when you're in line and when you're out of line of the man that you want to be. Without that North Star goal, it's all relative. It's like, I had a good day, I had a bad day, but you're not like going anywhere. It's just kind of like, it's all relative. And these goals are so important, especially the internal ones like that, because you can feel like, oh man, I just had a rough day. I just yelled at my wife. Like, what's up with that? My goal was to be nice and I'm being a jerk. What's going on? And it gives you a chance to kind of sort through that. And of course, the initial emotions will be to feel like a failure, but you can work through that. That's where accountability, that's where having, people to talk to really comes in handy. Because I wanted to mention I think I mentioned this recently in a solo episode that I did, but I want to mention it again that in Acton Academy, the school that I fell in love with and the one that now exists in Denver, where my kids go to when we're in Denver, they have this motto that's like, it's something along the lines of fail fast, fail cheap, fail often. And it's just like, get it out of your system that you're failing so that you can just continue to iterate until it's not a failure anymore. It's just a stepping stone, right? But if you fail seldom, it's like very long stints between failure, then that failure is like debilitating. It's more debilitating because it's like this stranger that comes into your life and kind of rearranges all your furniture, and you're like, oh, and you go through this metaphysical crisis. But if failure's right there and you understand it, then it stops feeling like a failure. It's just like, oh, I didn't achieve what I wanted to, but I will, right? It's much more along that energy than like, oh, this sucks. I suck. Everything sucks. That energy.
Yes, I would agree 100%. I have felt that the unknown was that I was failing at focusing on this North Star that I wanted, which is to be grateful to my wife. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that I was failing at it. And so there was this kind of undercurrent, subtle feeling of I'm doing something wrong. And it was because I wasn't aligned, but I wasn't verbalizing it or clearly making it clear crystally that this is what I want to be. And so it's kind of like a constant feeling for years, actually. It's like, I don't know, something's off, alignment, and I don't know what it is. But I realized that it was really because I wasn't stepping up to the plate and serving her in a way that she was asking me to serve her, actually.
Yeah.
Instead, I was kind of serving in a way that I felt I can or is best for me, but to an extent that's like, is that love if it's for my comfort? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially if somebody's asking for it. There's like a balance, of course. But if I'm just like, no, I'm good. Like, I don't want to help you. I've done that so many times. I'm like, no, honey, I'm good. Ask
She
the kids.
comes up and she's like, "Can you fold this laundry?" Like, no, shut up. I'm trying to do a condition to serve you. Don't interrupt me.
I'm talking with Andrew on a podcast about serving my wife. Be quiet. But of course, she's very graceful, and so she's not gonna say like, she's just gonna be like, okay, right. So it took me a long time to learn this lesson. So I feel like I'm different just because I just made it clear, like that's who I want to be. And if I'm not that, then I know it. Like you said, it's like a little antenna that goes up. It's like, okay, time to get back on track,
Yeah. And I want to stay in the realm of sexual integrity for a while because this is very personal because when people have slips, it can be very debilitating for their recovery because they feel like a failure. So many times, I'm sure you've heard this many times that somebody's doing well, then they have a slip and they're like, well, I failed, so I might as well just stay in the muck for a while. I might as well cause myself as much pain while I'm in pain as possible and really like clean up. Like it's like the Costco mindset, but for suffering. It's like, while I'm here, I might as well stock up on terrible feelings. I almost swore. Sorry, Heavenly Parent.
Pizza. He was gonna say pizza.
I was gonna say pizza
Costco
with a
pizza.
sh. So this is really something that I feel like you need community to sort through these feelings, especially in the early stages. When you start to have a good tradition of handling failures well, then you can sort through it more by yourself because you can see yourself more objectively. But in the beginning, especially in a certain phase of recovery, the emotions are so strong and they seem so real. Like I'm a failure, I suck. Those emotions are so strong that they're so convincing and you just believe that it's true, right? So you see these guys who are like, yeah, it's the I ams, like I am trash, I am a failure. And these people oftentimes leave High Noon. Or they leave trying because they're like, this is who I am, this is where I belong. Right? And again, I would say that the crucial step there is unpacking it together with your accountability partner, your mentor, your parents, if you can, a dear friend, a kindred spirit, somebody that can help you to see yourself more objectively, that you have existed prior to these failures, you will exist after these failures. It's context. You feel like this failure is like your natural state, and you need to unpack the fact that you have other states too, and you can pick and choose those as well. But it's painful, of course, to not live up to your desired, ambitions and whatever. But you can sort through that, but not by yourself because it's a jumbled mess. Especially when you fall, you need to unpack it with somebody.
Yeah. It's very hard to see yourself accurately, healthily, in an understanding way.
Yeah.
Back to the basketball game, you could the players, if a player is unwise, they'll think, "Oh, I know the game because I'm in it." But a wise player will say, "I don't know everything. I don't see the whole picture." The coach knows the whole picture. Spectators like to think they know the whole picture. It's actually the coach that knows intricately every player and the opponent pretty well too, and how everything's going in a holistic stage. So we need to be able to take a step back, usually from mentorship, or have a bird's eye view, God's perspective, if you will, on me and my life. And that's actually, I think, one of the most healing things is to take a step back. And that's why when I'm talking with people about porn, masturbation, I like to help them understand themselves from a logical perspective as to why they do this, because the reason people think they do is usually not the reason. And there are layers and layers and layers under it. And when they can kind of see it more clearly, even at the intellectual level, their heart starts to have compassion for themselves. And they're able to see themselves like, oh, that's why. It's not because I'm weird or perverted or a freak. It's just like, oh, that's it. And that's all that's going on. And they can suddenly see themselves more objectively, like you say, and understand and then address the actual issue instead of conflating and supplementing all the thoughts with this negativity and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a multi-tier process. And the more that you talk about it, the more that you objectify your failure. That's an integral step, is that, like you were saying before, a lot of people say, I am a failure, because you are one with that failure. But the more that you talk about it and the more that you can gain perspective, you start to see that the failure is separate from you. It's something that you participated in, but it doesn't define you. And then you can see it more clearly for what it is. But if it's in you and it is you, then it's just a jumbled mess, and then it impacts everything. Because then you could even have like this filter of failure, and you even look back on your past through the filter lens, and like now everything's a failure. Even victories, it's like, yeah, it was good when I did this, but then I failed. So then like even the good stuff sucks, and everything's just like tainted by this filter of garbage. So yeah, the objectification of your failures is crucial. And I don't believe it's possible to do by yourself. You can self-reflect, you can pray and do all this. And that starts the process of conceptualizing that you are better than your failure. But to really extract the failure from yourself, like to get it out of you and to objectify it, is the process of talking it out with somebody. Which is why talking therapy is so helpful. Like, for some people, it's just like they need to just formulate what it is that they feel into words, and that starts the process of literally getting it out of you by talking it out of you, by putting it out into the world, and now you can see it more clearly. And so you don't need therapy necessarily. You could talk to a bunch of different people depending on who it is that you lean on during such times. And if you don't have anybody, by golly gosh, find somebody. And that's why we're creating this mentorship system in High Noon in the first place, because a lot of people feel like they don't have anybody, which may or may not be true. But the talking about it is the whole point. That was why I was really a strong proponent of this mentorship, daily mentorship, is because then you can see yourself more clearly. You're just talking it out. It's not to resolve, like your mentor is going to resolve your problems. That's not the point. It's that you can see your problems and get better at addressing them by formulating them into sentences, structured thoughts. Because failure, the feeling, can just be like an overwhelming sense of like, I guess I'm just a piece of trash, right? And it's like, that's clearly not true, but it can be a feeling. And unless you sort through that feeling and parcel out what's true and what's not, then it's just, you're just left with a giant pile of garbage on your front lawn. You know?
That's it. Garbage. That's the word that you were looking for earlier. Right.
So what we're saying is feeling like a failure plus talking about it objectifies it, ferments the failure, and turns it into a resurrected natto bean, which is now a superfood, which is good for your gut health. So that's when a failure becomes a victory, is when it's learned, when it becomes wisdom. That's the only way you can gain wisdom, is by learning. And real wisdom isn't something in your head, it's in your body. You know it to be true because you've fought through so many different feelings to see the other side of it. And so like with sexual integrity, it's like you've gone through the highs and the lows, and you know what's true and what's not. So in your head, you can be your own jury, and you can be your own lawyer talking to the jury. And there's, a defendant over there, but you know his tricks because you've gone to court many times and you can defeat them, right? But without that, it's just like the whole world is against you. That's what it feels like,
Yeah. Concur.
All right. So please, everybody, if you are feeling like a failure, I just, to keep it simple, the next step is to talk about it and to learn how to objectify that failure. Find out, yes, maybe you've done something regrettable. That doesn't have to define how you feel about yourself or about, henceforth your life. It's a learning lesson, but only if you unpack it and objectify that instant and that situation and learn from it. And that's how you can graduate to the next thing. You got to talk about it. So talk about it as much as possible, your failures with the people in your life.
Yeah.
Any last words?
And that's why we literally have programs that are free for you guys to join. If you guys want to talk to us, if you want to mentor, if you want to talk to Andrew or myself, we can do that. So there's no reason, there's no excuse.
Right? No excuses. Have a great day, everybody. We're just going to end there. It really feels like we just ended a conversation. When a conversation's done and you're just like, okay, well, see ya, right?
Yep.
That's us. So see ya.
Hey, did you know that our team wants to do more events? Well, if you want to bring the High Noon message to your community or group, then let us know and we'll try to work something out. There's a simple application that you can fill out right now at highnoon.org/invite. And one of our team members will get back to you to see what's possible. That's highnoon.org/invite. All right, see you in the next episode.